Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Fits. I really was having a Zen fit this morning. I really didn't. I wasn't gonna do a Zen live this morning. I just didn't have anything. I don't have to do it. Take a day off. So I was stumbling around on the internet, and I usually check in at salon.com, and so they had this thing, 5 interesting porn sites. So so I looked at what are they. So one of them was Hysterical Literature. Now, I hope you realize that don't look at what the finger's pointing to it and not the finger here. Okay. So the basic setup of this historical literature, it was really very profound. So you have a woman sitting at a table reading Emerson or something that's really difficult to read, rather philosophical. And in the meantime, someone is giving her, she's getting an orgasm by a vibrator underneath the table. So she's trying to read while this orgasm is coming up. And so she's trying to hold to read. But her being, the joy is rising up, and she pushes it down, and she gives into it. So anyway, so I was, so I watched that, and then I went out, and I'm sitting on the front porch, and I'm reading my Zen books or whatever, and the whole thing, the metaphorical, the whole thing was such a beautiful metaphor for some very profound problems we humans have with suffering and joy. Now, Christianity says basically that everything is based in original sin. The traditional Catholicism or Calvinistic Protestant is that the whole purpose of life is to have our sin atoned, to be redeemed from sin, to be free from sin, which is suffering. And the cause of this original sin was Adam and Eve. They were disobedient. They were bad. So they got kicked out of a sinless place into a world where now they have to struggle and seek God and suffer. And so then the Christian answer to this is that Christ died for our sins, and through Christ's body on earth, which is the church, one can be redeemed from our sins and free from suffering. Well, how does that work? Anybody free from suffering? No. So the answer is, well, you just aren't trying hard enough, or you're not believing hard enough. You believe more, try harder. So the Buddhist view, Zen Buddhist, Zen is easier to say. So Zen says, the Buddha says, that all life are Buddha nature. All beings, all human beings have Buddha nature. And Buddha nature is original wholeness. Or you could say the Garden of Eden before Adam and Eve were kicked out. So we're all that originally, we're all that always already now. We're already joyous. So joy, wholeness and joy are the same. So joy is the foundation, is the ground of our being. Yet then Buddha says all life is suffering in his first noble truth. So now we got a contradiction. Life is joyous, life is suffering. What's going on? This is a contradiction. So then I was looking at this, watching this historical literature, and there it was. You had the woman was given instruction in obedience. Read this literature. Don't give up. Read it. Don't surrender in. This is your duty. This is our worldly ego. Which has to obey the instructions, has to obey the world, and believe that what we see is real, so this is kind of like the metaphor for the reading the literature is our ego. This is where we live consciously. This is our consciousness. This is the world, which is obedient. We are obedient to what the world says is real. The world is our God. We believe that trucks are standing at trucks and cars and birds and everything is real as we see it. So that's one. So she's reading it, So then the orgasm comes and she begins to lose, she begins to break apart. And try as she can. Being comes up, joy comes up, you see. So what is the real here? Is the body, the joy of the body real? Or is it the obedience of the mind? Which wins out? The joy of the body wins out. So joy wins. The ground of being. You see this? God is seen in two ways in Christianity. Christianity is split over this. Eastern thought isn't. But Christianity is split. So Christianity says, well, God is Yahweh. He's the creator. He's separate from the creation. And the creation is fallen because of Adam and Eve. So God is outside. And he says, oh, you poor humans. If you'd only obey me, you'd be okay. But then the other movement in Christianity is that God, and I remember when this came up in the 60s with Paul Tillich, who's a Protestant theologian, and is also in Catholic doctrine through the mystics of the Middle Ages, St. John of the Cross and the mystic tradition, and that is that God is the ground of being, that God is our ground of being. That God is our joyous ground of being, always already here, closer to us than we are to ourselves. So these two contradictory doctrines kind of like run through our minds like two one-way streets going the opposite way. Is God separate? Am I separate from God? Am I kicked out of the garden? I've always got to seek and try to get back into the God, you see? Or is God already here and I'm just turning my back on it? And this is what Buddhism means by sin. So in both in Christianity and Buddhism, they say sin is turning away from God and pretending he's not there. Basically, disobedience. So, but so the Buddhist view is there's no concept of sin in Buddhism. It's ignorance or klesa, C-L-E-S-A. And klesa means ignorance or turning away from our ground of being, from our true nature, turning away from our true nature. So we get back to this hysterical literature, and there you have it. She's given the instructions to read the book, and she's seriously reading it, but she's trying to turn away from her true nature, which is the orgasm, the joy of being coming up. So she's holding the joy of, reading, ooh, and so it's constantly this holding and releasing. She can't finally gives up. But this is life. We're constantly holding our attitude, and we're constantly holding our world in place, and yet the joy of our being is constantly rising up and calling us, And so we answer that call. How do you stay in the world? In other words, these are two commandments. Surrender to the orgasm of life, or be serious and hold to your instructions. No, you see. Surrender or hold. Let go or keep. You see, these two dynamics going on in every way, So this whole egoic world consciousness that we live in is a holding pattern. but we're constantly being attacked by the orgasm of life, by the call of life, you see. And so we all answer this call in our own creative ways. A hunter answers that call when he works all week and finally on the weekend he answers the call and goes hunting. Or extreme sports, or any kind of sports, or entertainment, or a crossword puzzle, or an affair. See, we always have ways of answering the call of the joy of our being, and letting go of the seriousness of the world and our ego and our place in it, you see. So this is a constant dance going on. And so the Buddha says then that your true being is the joy of being, or the Buddha, but your life is suffering because you turn away from it. You ignore it. You hold, you see. So that's the suffering. And the joy is the release. You see. And the joy is always there. But when we're whole, we're in time. So the woman reading the book is in time. I've got to read the book. I've got to do the instruction. I've got to hold and do this job. I've got to do this duty, you see. I've got in time, you see. But the orgasm is timeless. The orgasm is not tomorrow. You see, the orgasm is now. Life is now. In Indian philosophy, life is the creation. The cosmos is an ongoing orgasm. It's Shiva and Shakti, God and Shakti, the male and female principle, making love, and that's what the cosmos is. It's always going on, you see. So this, I just thought this was it just got me excited. Kind of like an insight to me is an orgasm coming up. It really is. So I'm kind of like, I'm reading, I'm doing, nothing, listening to the mockingbird sing, and this insight comes up, and I wanted to share it, you see. I wanted to share this joy of awakening. So awakening is basically turning around and accepting the joy of our being, which is creative. Creativity is joy. Creativity is the ground of our being. Creativity is the Buddha. You see? Creativity is Christ. So it's through creativity. It's through the release of our serious, time-bound, straitjacket ego that's wanting to do our duty and be respected and loved and liked and make fame and be righteous and all that stuff. The obedience, trying to obey, is what is the holy. And so when that suffering becomes too great, we answer the call and release, you see. When the Buddha left his palace, his pleasure palace, and went into the town, he saw sickness, old age, and death. These three. And this is the old age, sickness, old age, and death are the laws of the world. So when you identify and live in the ego or world consciousness that I'm a thing and you're a thing and we're all things together in this mad thing world, you see. We're just a bunch of marbles bouncing around, you see. And I have to obey the law and be serious and be good and all that. The laws of that world are sickness, old age, and death. SOD, S-O-D, sickness, old age. Those are the laws. But when you release that, now see, the fourth thing that Buddha saw when he left the palace was a monk, a renunciate. He was renouncing the other three. So he was looking for the orgasm. He was looking for the release into the joy of being that the other three turned away, were the fruit of turning away. So when we turn away from the joy of our being, we live within the laws of sickness, old age, and death. Everything is getting sick, everything is dying, everything is dead, you see. Those are the laws of the world. But the laws of our being is timeless, joyous, everlasting life, creative, you see. And that is always already present. So this little hysterical literature was fun to watch, but it had, for me, a profound insight. Because the world out there is all, for me, is all metaphor to be discovered that point to your essential ground of being that is joy. Everything points to your joy, your timeless, eternal ground of being, or God, that is joy, that dwells within you as you. But the world turns away. And when we obey the world, which we have to do, we have to live in the world and get a job and catch a bus and do all that, you see. But with understanding, we know that the orgasm of life is always rising up when we relax and release, you see. So anyway, thank you for tuning in.